Come to this video recording. We are now wanting to experiment under this channel. So this is our maiden edition, and we'll expect that as we progress, we'll be able to also show some progress to what we are trying to do. Now, the topic of this I'm going to try and discuss here is a paper that I did, which was titled "A Memo to the President," which was generously published by all the papers in the country. And point of fact, it was published by Guardian and This Day. Now, what I tried to do in that paper, as has been my habit for some time now, is to raise some salient points, which I thought, as a part of my social responsibility, that should engage, the attention of the president. That's if he cares to listen. Even if he does not listen, I would expect that some of his lieutenants would listen and then give the message to him. It will appear on this occasion that the president did listen because there are excerpts from this paper which I have seen him quote. Now, what I tried to do was this election was coming, there were lots of issues about the president and how worthy or how good is it for the country for him to come for a second term. And now, some of us who looked at it and we looked at the agitations, and we did say to ourselves that already we have a momentum. So there's a momentum of critical mass, and then we are ready to go. And some of the teething problems we've had, when his administration came on board, would expect that those problems have now been taken care of, and that he will on to a roaring start, if he has a second term. And so that's the expectation. And so looking at what's happened during his first coming, the fact that it took him so long to constitute a cabinet. Now, one of the first points we had embraced in this memo was the fact that he should be ready, to take the list of his ministers to the Ninth Assembly, National Assembly, for them to be able to vet and approve, because there be no justification anymore for him to delay like it happened in the first leg. And we did make the point that he should aim as much as possible to have round pegs in a round hole, and make sure that people are fit for purpose, and then also to make sure that his cabinet is inclusive from the point of view that we want to have a cross-section of representation. We want to see some youthful people in the cabinet. We also want gender sensitivity should also be demonstrated, as we'd also want to see some women, have a fair representation. And that once we did this, that should be the first order of business. Now, the next issue which I addressed, those who have known me will know that that is my favorite, is a passion I have, is the budget. I'm known across this country somebody who's always comes out, to make some comments on budgets whenever they were issued, going back to the mid-80s. And so I raised some pertinent issues. Well, budget is very important. If you are going to run this economy, the blueprint, the projects and policies and programs which you are going to use to run this economy, they are all captured in your budget. I know there are issues with budget in this country. One of them is the fact that with late start, late submission, late consideration, late implementation, and then we end up at the end of the day, not being able to implement the budget. And so we turn around and expect to make some progress. It's difficult to make progress when you have budgets, particularly capital budgets, which you're not implementing. So So I thought that should be the first order of business. And one of the things I did say is that we should be able to synchronize the budget year with the calendar year. So like it obtains elsewhere. The budget year starts at the beginning of the year, 1st January, and goes to the end of December. As long as continuously for a long time here, the budget would start at May, and then by the end of December, we've not gone anywhere half. We're trying to implement the budget. So I thought that we should be able to do this. And I did recommend that one of the things we needed to do was to have, the president should insist that National Assembly should have a budget office. And this budget office should be able to work with the budget office of the Federation, so that, as the budget is being put together, is being conceptualized and is being formulated, they're carried along. And if there are any particular projects they want to see included, we know about all these constituency projects and so on and so forth, that we try to capture them, so that when the budget is finalized, the issue of approval from the National Assembly would be seamless, and then we'll be able to save some time and make some progress. Now, having said that, I also talked about there are certain issues, aspects of this economy that we would have to make sure that we don't allow to slide. If you look at some of the projects, take agriculture for instance, there's massive progress in the area of agriculture to some extent, courtesy of Central Bank with its anchor borrowers program in the area of rice production. And in fact, it has also been recently reported that Nigeria has overtaken Egypt as the highest rice producer on the African continent. And it's something that we need to watch. We mustn't take it for granted. And so we can see success stories here and there. You come to the fiscal operations, we can see that Federal Inland Revenue Services will seem to have done very well in trying to mobilize tax revenue. And the latest word out there says that they mobilized about over 5 trillion naira in tax revenue. Now, this is an area which I think that we must make sure that we don't slide. We make sure that we progress, because what happens in other countries where progress is made, where they don't have natural resources, to rely on, is that the tax revenue, the mobilization money get from tax revenue, from tariffs, customs, and excise, is what should fund recurrent expenditure. But that's not so in this country, because in fact we went to a stage whereby we now borrow, to fund consumption, and certainly that's not sustainable, and that's something we must try and quickly bring to an end. So I think that those are areas that I think that we should try and capture. And I also took some privilege and talked about the Central Bank. Central Bank is very important, in this economy. We know what the institution represents in terms of monetary policy. And I did advise that the president, if it's possible, should allow the present governor. I know that that's like asking something that's very, very almost difficult, but it's something that is worth considering. The incumbent, whose tenure expires early June, to continue in office, because I want to see some stability in some of the policies. And because what will happen is that you bring in, if one looks back and if one monitored and tracks what has happened in this economy for quite some time, you find that what normally happens is that somebody comes and comes under pressure, and too many teachers out there, and the person has been tutored and told what to do, and then he begins to experiment. And each time we try to do that, then our conditions worsened. And so we had that experience under this administration, so it's not something that is far-fetched. When this administration came on board in 2016, and the governor has been on board for some time, there were some agitations, and the governor was pressured, and they were told that they didn't know what they were doing, and so on. That we were trying to overly manage the economy. We should liberalize. We should allow market forces free rein. That was attempted, and then the rate of exchange automatically overnight depreciated, from about 158 naira to $1 to the current 304 in the official market, 360 in the there's exporters importers window. And if not that the panic button was really hit, by now we'll be talking about a rate of exchange of about 500 naira to $1. And obviously that's happened. The bottom must have fallen off this economy. And so we need to be very careful. We need to, foreign exchange. We cannot begin to talk about liberalizing, given market forces a free rein in determining the rate of exchange, because certainly there's no market in foreign exchange in this economy. We don't have a market. You can't have a market. What's a market is that where you have one dominant supplier and you have too many people wanting to demanding this currency. And to a large extent, this demand is almost price inelastic. So those who are demanding this dollars, they're not doing it, the price goes up, then they will now switch their demand to something else. It's not so. So they are hooked on this. And so it is something that I have to be very careful about. Now, having said that, I think that we'll pray for the president. We are optimistic. We know that the issues are in court. But my take is that from what we've seen in social media, there's no party that is immune from malpractice during this election. So with respect and with a gap, with a differential of about 4 million votes, that's going to be difficult to subvert. But I would think that maybe we should just leave that for the courts, to progress. Now, thank you for listening.